This happened to me a few years ago. I couldn't tell you why I suddenly had the urge to write it down for the people of Reddit, but here it goes. A few years ago, I was living in an older house in a small university town in northern Idaho. I'd been living in that house with 3 other roommates for a few years at that point. My roommates had come and gone. My mental health was in ebb and flow, just like any other person. At this point, my sister was living with me and had experienced her own paranormal things that I was indirectly connected to. But for the purpose of this post, I want to just focus on one particular experience that I had with the little girl. This particular night, I had done my nightly routine, washed my face, brushed my teeth, scrolled through Instagram, the works. It was just like any other night. Eventually I tucked my phone out of reach and fell asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night, not completely unusual. I usually wake up once or twice during the night. It's pretty rare for me to sleep through the whole night. Usually I just turn over and go back to sleep, like usual. But this night wasn't usual by any stretch of the imagination. There's one window in my bedroom which faces the neighbour's porch light. They very rarely turn it off, so there's always a certain amount of light coming through my window into my room. But when I woke up, everything was dark. I didn't immediately think anything of it. I mean, at some point the porch light would have to burn out and be replaced. Honestly, it didn't even cross my mind. Something was up. My anxiety, something I'm medicated for, immediately spiked. My heart began to race, and any ounce of tiredness I had in my eyes was gone, as I stared wide-eyed at a little girl. Across from me, crouched by my bookshelf, only about 2 feet tall, maybe less, was a grey little girl. She looked emaciated. Her hair was almost sticky looking and matted. She was wearing a nightdress. Think Little House on the Prairie, that was shredded at the bottom and dirty. She was crouched, almost like a frog, and it was almost like she was soaking up whatever light there was that was coming from the window, making the room completely dark, except for a grey light emanating from her. If that was all it had been, I think I would have just rolled over and gone back to sleep. I had done something similar to a shadow figure over my bed previously, but it was her face. Her face told me that she wasn't some innocuous child, spirit, ghost, or whatever. She was something awful and something I needed to fear. Her eyes were very large, and she had no eyebrows. Her matted bangs covered most of her forehead, so I could focus on her white iris and goat pupils. If that wasn't enough, she was smiling at me, but it wasn't a sweet smile. It was a menacing, evil grin. It stretched from ear to ear and bored into my soul. Once I realized what was going on, that there was an evil-looking child in my room, I went into fight or flight. All I could get myself to do was hide underneath my covers. I didn't scream, jump out of my bed and run. Nothing. I was so scared I couldn't move. Eventually I knocked myself out of whatever terrified trance I was in. I had regulated my breathing and my heart rate went back to normal. I peeked out from under my covers and saw that there was nothing there. I was so relieved and figured that somehow a bad dream had kind of leaked into real life for a moment. I got up from my bed, wary but confident that it was an absolutely terrifying dream. I decided if it was a dream, I would go downstairs to grab a glass of water. When I have bad dreams and I don't move around, I can get sucked back into that dream. And from my reaction to this one, I absolutely wanted to not get sucked back into it. So, I got my glass of water, climbed back up the stairs and walked down the hall to my bedroom and put a half-full glass of water on my windowsill. I didn't have anything else to put it on by my bed. The entire house was silent. I managed to fall asleep again. I don't know how much later I woke up again. The room was, again, so dark. I immediately knew something was wrong, again. I searched for the little girl across the room by my bookshelf, and she wasn't there. I was relieved, but I knew there was something off. Slowly, I realized that there was light coming from the side of my bed, and it was that grey light. I turned my gaze downward to the edge of my bed, and there were those eyes. The white, goat eyes and the sticky, matted bangs. Then there was that smile. I could feel the weight of that glass of water on my bladder at that moment. The menacing, evil smile stretching ear to ear. I couldn't see the rest of her body. She was so close to me. All I could see was her eyes, looking up at me, and the enjoyment she was receiving from scaring the ever-living shit out of me. This time, I screamed. I yelled my sister's name and threw the covers back over my head and cried. This wasn't right. I had done everything right. I went and got a glass of water. I shouldn't still be in this awful dream. I don't know how long I stayed under the covers. I must have eventually fallen asleep, because the next morning I awoke to the morning sunlight streaming through my windows and birds chirping outside. It took a minute to remember what had occurred the night before. I immediately went to tell my sister what happened, and that I was very annoyed she didn't come to my rescue. After I told my sister, I came back into my room and noticed that glass of water had fallen onto the carpeted floor. So I did get a glass of water. I wasn't just dreaming. I must have knocked it over when I reacted so fearfully to the second approach from the girl. Anyways, that's what happened. I'm wondering if anyone else has had an experience with something similar. A ghost kill? My cousin suggested it was a demon in the form of a girl, feeding off of my fear. I'm not sure about that, but I'm sure of one thing. I never want to see her again. A little backstory to fill you all in on what's been happening. I'll start this off with the fact that I believe I've been haunted from some of my earlier memories. There have always been unexplainable sounds, shadows, or figures in the corner of my eye. As I got older, I'm now 22, I started to get used to these things, since I could never confirm these things for sure, and they never seemed to try and harm me in any way. Hell, I could have just been seeing and hearing things out of paranoia for all I knew. But these last 2 weeks, the activity has quickly ramped up since my roommate had been on vacation. I was accustomed to hearing things, but I could always blame it on my cat or dog. But Sunday night, I was in my room watching YouTube on the PS4. I was in a party with my friend, just talking. I then heard a very distinct "why" come from the outside of my cracked door. I'm staring at the opening as every hair on my body stands on end. My friend then says, "Hey, who was that?" That prompted me to jump out of bed and get my knife. I'm explaining to my friend that I had no idea who that was, and I think someone is in my house. The whole time I'm just fixed on this cracked open door, with a terrible feeling that something bad is about to happen at any second. Then suddenly, the bad feeling is gone, and I gather my courage and rush into the hallway and turn on the light. I didn't see anything. I searched the rest of the house and see nothing. He said he heard it, and we both came to the conclusion it had to be my cat making a weird noise. He makes weird ones all the time, but never like that. But I was ready to leave it at that. 2 days later, Tuesday night, I'm watching YouTube again, this time with the door locked and closed. It was open because it gets hot in my room if the door is closed, but I didn't care. I was spooked. So, I'm watching a pro game match, and at the end of the videos, they add time to it to keep you from guessing the winner of the match early by looking at the time left in the video. I ended up dozing off pretty early in the video. I wake up some time later, and I'm just listening to the match for a few minutes to see how everything is going. I realized I'd never get back to sleep if I kept listening, so I decided to turn off the TV and go to bed. I turn around, eyes closed, because I didn't want to wake up fully and find the remote on the nightstand and try to turn it off. It wasn't working, so I figured I left a controller in front of the sensor again and prepare myself to open my eyes in an exaggerated fashion. When I open them, I see this figure standing in front of the TV. I couldn't tell if it was looking at the TV or at me. It looked like a black stick figure, but a full head of long straight black hair. It was probably about 4 feet tall. In utter shock, I just lay there looking at this thing. Time goes on, and it doesn't move a muscle, and neither did I. I felt like if I moved, something bad would happen. So I continued to stare at the back or front of its head, still not sure where it's looking. A few minutes go by, and I realize the match is complete and the black screen is about to pop up in the next few minutes. I had no idea what I should do. It's been about 10 minutes since I noticed this thing, and it hasn't moved an inch, but my fear only increased. Out of panic, I called out to it. I screamed, "Who are you?" I got no response. It continued just standing there. I'm still not sure what it's looking at. At this point, I could no longer bear to look at it. I closed my eyes and rolled back over, turning my back to it. In the next few minutes, the match was over, and it was silent. I hear no sound of it moving, but I once again had that feeling if I turned to look, I would regret it. So I lay there, pretending to be asleep, while every sense was on high alert. I was starting to think it was gone when I had this overwhelming sense of presence. like someone was standing right behind me. I then felt little pricks on the side of my face that's not on the pillow. It felt like here, the mental image I came up with from this information almost caused me to start bawling. I was starting to think I was going to die, but I didn't want to look at it. I was afraid of what I would see. So I lay there, still as a corpse, and I heard a faint Alice, and the feeling vanished just like that. Still stricken with fear, I didn't dare open my eyes. I ended up falling back to sleep. I had a confusing dream that I'll talk about if you all want me to, but I'm not sure what I did to cause this to suddenly start getting so serious, or if I'm starting to get sick with some sort of mental illness. Let me know.